Hey everybody, this is Gawrysiak from Shenandoah University, and you are watching the Mid-Atlantic Esports Conference on Twitch.
All right, so with me today we have Gawrysiak. He is the Program Director of Shenandoah University Esports Program, and actually a return guest to our Bash event. So welcome, Joey. How are you doing?
Doing great. Yeah, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to be on here, so really appreciate the time.
And we appreciate your time as well. Thank you so much for coming back, because it's always, I mean, you're awesome, so it's always nice to talk to you just in general, but it's always nice to hear how programs develop, you know, with the esports programs at our MAEC schools, so we can sort of see like, hey, what happened last year, what happened 2 years ago, and where we are now. So we'll launch into that in just a second, but for folks who are just hearing from you for the first time, do you mind just taking a minute to introduce yourself?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Joey Gawrysiak. I'm the director as well as a professor of esports here at Shenandoah University. I've been here for about 10 years. Esports has not been around that whole time. It's been something that we started about 4 years ago with the competitive side of the program, and started it 3 years ago on the academic side of the program, because we really wanted to offer kind of an all-encompassing view of what esports can be at the collegiate level here at Shenandoah University. I'm an avid, I used to be an avid Halo player, but I am way past my prime. So I competed a lot when I was in college, and I still play some video games, but definitely not competitively anymore, because I am a controller player, and my players love to call me boomer because I can't use keyboard and mouse. But I certainly played a lot of video games back in my day in college, and I still play a lot now. But yeah, just really happy to be part of this program, really happy to be part of the Mid-Atlantic Esports Conference and be able to compete against other schools in our area. You know, I've talked to a lot of coaches and directors, and what we have going on is something that's real special, and it's a lot of fun, and it's great for our students to be able to play against other schools that are kind of right down the road. Even though we play online for most competitions, being able to play against rival schools in our geographic area is really, really cool. So always glad to be part of these conversations. Great to be part of the Mid-Atlantic Esports Conference. And yeah, just continue to grow in what I do and trying to offer the best collegiate esports opportunity I can for all students, whether that's on the competitive side or the academic side. We just see a lot of value in what esports has to offer. And we think our students are really passionate about the esports program, just like I am and have been for a number of years. So that's what we try to do here at Shenandoah University. I'm just so happy to be part of this program.
That's awesome. And you said a lot of interesting stuff there. So I'm going to have several questions there to unpack it. But let's start with MAEC first. You said it's a special organization, special league, and you're certainly enjoying your time there. And, you know, that's good to hear from Game Jam perspective. We certainly think it's special. What do you think makes it different, or what makes it a good league?
Yeah, I think I kind of touched on just a bit, is the fact that we can play against other schools that are in our area. You know, having schools in Maryland, DC, and Virginia, to have an organized structure where we can compete against each other. It's kind of fun to do that smack talking with other coaches and directors about games that are coming up, or to be able to travel. You know, with COVID, obviously nobody's been able to travel, but knock on wood, as we're coming out of the pandemic, we're able to plan more in-person events that are much easier to get to for our students, where we don't have to worry about traveling across the country to play against schools that are in Missouri or up in New York or anything like that. We can play against schools that are right here in our own backyards, to have these geographic rivalries that we've seen in these traditional sports that we've had in these areas, but now we can do that in esports. And that's one of the great things about it, because playing online, yeah, that's great. Being able to type GGs in the chat, log off, that's one thing. But being able to actually shake somebody's hand or dap them up afterwards, after a game, and be able to talk with them and have an actual conversation, there's so much more to it on that side of it than just, you know, typing in the chat and then logging off and never talking to that person again. So having the Mid-Atlantic Esports Conference with the quality of competition, with having access to CLOL, is really beneficial on the competitive side. But just on the community building side is kind of the biggest advantage that I see, that we can get our students to engage and interact with one another in a meaningful way right in this area of the country where some of the top schools are in the country. And so it's a lot of fun, great people in this area, great students in this area, great competition in this area. So I think the Mid-Atlantic Esports has really unlocked the potential, the esports potential for all of us in this part of the country. And I couldn't be more grateful for what everybody at Game Jam has done to set this up for us, to kind of allow our students to have this opportunity that you just can't get other places.
All right. So speaking of MAEC and your team's participation, or your school's participation, can you tell us what games do you have teams participating in right now? How are they doing, if you want to talk about that? And are there any games that you're looking forward to adding to MAEC?
Sure, great question. So we compete in Overwatch, Rocket League, and League of Legends, and that's been great. League of Legends, great having a partner CLOL conference. Unfortunately, our team is not up to par with some of the other teams that we have here. Overwatch and Rocket League are very good. We typically get either first or second in the MAEC each season, which is great. I'd love to get first a little more often, especially be great to beat GMU a little bit more often. Thanks, Lauren. But no, it's always a lot of fun. Again, you can talk smack to these people that are right in your own backyard that you talk to all the time. And so those games have been really, really good for us. Those are 3 of our varsity teams that we have here overall. Some things I'd like to see is more Smash Brothers. And I think, again, that kind of goes in line with having in-person events and opportunities. Everybody says it, everybody knows it. Smash Online is not the same as Smash Brothers in person.
Not at all. Not at all.
So Smash Online, it's okay. It's better than, I guess, nothing to most people. Debatable, I guess. But Smash in person, I'm really excited to get to a point where we can travel to maybe 1 or 2 different sites a semester and have a big Smash Brothers event with all of our schools kind of coming there, those that can make it and travel, and having almost like a circuit system where we can set up, how you do it one kind of transfers over to the next one, or, maybe they're individual. I don't know the exact format or setup for that, but I really want to see Smash in a bigger way going forward as we are able to travel more. Again, that's the big advantage of the MAEC, is that we're all in this area and we're all within, I don't know what the driving distance, we're all within probably 4 hours at the most of each other that we'd have to be in. And so you can do that for a weekend, do an overnight trip, a 4-hour drive. I think it's a great experience for students. So I'd love to see more Smash Brothers being offered. Looking at what else is out there, Valorant and Apex are 2 games that I think are extremely popular around the country, growing as well. Apex maybe not as much as Valorant right now, and I know Valorant's tough because of Riot's rules that they have for the community licenses. Apex also pretty tough to get that community license through Respawn and EA, but it's something that we have a lot of interest here personally at our university, especially Apex. I don't know why, but Apex has exploded here. You never really know what's going to take off. So I would love to find more opportunities for competition for Apex, and then our Valorant team. We have a little bit, but not as much as I'd like to see either. But I think the biggest one would be Smash Brothers.
Got it. Is Apex exploding because it's sort of like, how like in fashion, there's a cycle where like, I guess the 80s were back a little bit ago. Maybe the 90s, so like Apex is like coming back and it's like really hot with the younger generation.
Yeah, it's like mom jeans, right? Mom jeans are a big thing that's coming back, and I mean, not that a lot of my students wear that, luckily, but it's I think so. It's just kind of coming back. It's cyclical, and it seems like whatever's not popular for a little while, it starts picking up more steam because then it's the cool thing to do to not play the trendy game, and then that becomes the trendy game when more people start playing it. So yeah, Apex, I don't know why it's exploded, but it is absolutely taken off, and it's a club right now. It's not a varsity team, but it's our biggest game that we offer.
Yeah, so speaking of actually games getting trendy, so you do a lot of things. One of them is that you're the co-founder and partner of GHS Esports Solutions, where you specialize in collegiate esports program management. And so on that note, I wanted to ask you, gaming versus esports, can you talk to us about that? What is the difference? Is one a subset of the other? And most importantly, what game would make for a good esport?
Sure. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. So GHS Esports Solutions has actually transformed now into Esports Development and Growth Enterprise. So now it's called Edge. It's a little bit of a more edgy name.
Edgy. I like it.
Yeah, there we go. But yeah, it's been a great company because what we're able to do is work with a lot of institutions, and that's at the higher ed level as well as the K through 12 level, just to talk to them about what esports is, but also, like you said, gaming, what gaming is. So gaming is obviously a much bigger industry than just esports. Esports being that smaller subsection of the gaming industry. And really, to me, the easiest way to say it is esports is competitive video games. I know there's other definitions of what esports is and definitions of what gaming is. I get it, but I try to keep it as simple as possible because then my students can actually understand. No, I have great students, but I try to make it as easy as possible for everybody to understand what esports is when I talk about it. It is just competitive video games. The gaming industry, absolutely massive. hundreds of billions of dollars a year globally. It's like bigger than the movie and music industry combined. Esports is a much smaller subsection because it's that competitive side. It's about a $2 billion industry or so worldwide on a yearly basis. So making up about, 1 to 2, maybe 3% of what the gaming industry at large is. So yeah, much smaller subsection. The gaming industry is much more casual, much more recreational. And I think we need to get more people getting into the esports industry, at least in a more recreational way or at the educational level, K through 12, middle school, collegiate opportunities as well. And in particular, we need more diversity. Right now, male dominated, where the gaming industry at large is about 46% female participation. Esports right now, I don't know the exact stats, but I would guess it is way less than 46% female participation.
1% maybe?
Yeah, exactly.
Last time I looked at it, it was literally listing like numbers of women participating versus a percent because it's like so small.
That's how bad it is. And so that I'd love to see more women and people that are not white males getting involved in esports, because I think it's better representative, and so it increases the diversity. We've got to just increase our offerings to do that. But I think a game that I'd like to see transition into esports, I don't know. Right now, the hot one is Elden Ring. And I know there's a PvP option in Elden Ring. I have not started playing it yet because I'm afraid if I start playing it, I'm not going to put it down. I'm still.
You still need to work.
I do need to work occasionally. I'm grinding Skyrim again still for the last 10 years. I'm just, for some reason still grinding Skyrim. I just love getting lost in that. And Elden Ring has some similar, effects to it, but there is that PvP option. I don't know if that would ever make for a good collegiate esport or K-12 esport or esport in general. I think it's fun. I think Halo would be great to bring back because that was my jam back in the day, was the original Halo, not Halo 2, not Halo 3, nothing after the original Halo Combat Evolved. And yes, that was the actual name of it, Combat Evolved. Halo CE was my favorite game of all time because I played it so much. So I'd love to see the new Halo just kind of get some more traction, get some more people playing it that are younger, not just in college. And so I'd love to see that become an esport because I think the game is a lot of fun. I think it kind of has a lot of the same elements that we saw way back in the day with the old school Halos that made them so popular at the get-go. But if I had to pick an old game, let's get GoldenEye. Let's get GoldenEye back in here. Let's play some 007 GoldenEye in the N64. Let's bring that one back and run it back for some esports competitions for that too.
Sounds good. So are you going to pitch those to the MAEC?
Sure. It will get no traction and people will look at me like I have 3 eyes, but yeah, I would love to try to bring back any of those games.
You never know. You never know. One of the great things about MAEC is that member schools participate in management of the league, right? You're a part of the board at the moment and schools get to vote on who is on the board. So I think that's really, really great aspect of the MAEC. So that is all to say that, hey, maybe if you propose something that you think is crazy, it actually might get traction because it's not just, 3 people deciding the outcome. It's all the member schools thinking about it at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah. I love member associations like the MAEC. I think that's really important and really powerful when the members have a voice in what goes on and they can help determine kind of the future of that organization. And that's why I wanted to be a part of the board, is that I wanted to help see where the MAEC could be, but more importantly, where it could go for our students. So I think that's a really, really great part of the organization, is that we are able to propose legislation, vote on things. And it's not, coming from just the highest level. It's coming from everybody to have a voice in what's going on, to avoid those unilateral decisions that might not make sense for everybody. So yeah, having that voice, extremely important. So really, really appreciate that about what the MAEC is and how it's built.
I agree. Totally agree. So I want to shift gears just a little bit from MAEC to your specific program, because you mentioned there's also an academic side to it. And I think that's really interesting. There's a lot to dig into it. So first I want to ask, what is all included in the academic side? For example, do you have esports classes? And if so, what do they look like?
Yeah, I think you just stop at what? You just stop at that part of your question and just, oh gosh, here we go.
Just
academic. Yeah, just what? Esports academics, what? Yeah, it's so we do offer a number of academic programs at the university. Off the top of my head, esports major, esports minor, esports concentration. We have a coaching certificate, coaching concentration. We also have an MBA concentration and MBA certificate in esports management. So a number of different offerings for esports. And yes, there are esports specific classes that we teach them about, esports event management, Sure. Event management is event management in some cases, where a sports event versus a concert versus an art event. Yeah, there are some overlapping concepts, but esports events are radically different in a lot of ways. Like this, what you see behind me, running stuff up here is very different than putting a basketball out on a court, running a 3v3 basketball tournament. So there are just nuances you have to understand about esports to operate an event successfully. But that's just one of the examples of an esports class. Esports governance, esports business, an intro to esports, of course, esports performance, talking about health, wellness, and nutrition when it comes to gamers and what esports is. Broadcast production is a huge part of our program. That is not only in the academic side, but also part of our arena has a large professional level broadcast production booth to it, where we can get our students in there running content creation, doing the video editing, doing graphic design, doing the overlays, the stingers, doing the play-by-play announcing behind our broadcast desk. So all those things kind of go hand in hand, because an esports education in the academic side is great, but what's even better is getting your hands-on learning, and that experiential learning is incredibly important. So you talk about internships, you talk about mentorships, you talk about volunteer opportunities at events, whether they're online, whether they're in person. Those are kind of the backbone of everything we do on the academic side of esports, as well as giving our students the skills that will not just apply to esports, because we don't want to say, hey, here's a degree, now you get to work in esports. Well, what if you don't get a job in esports? We want to make sure they're ready to work outside of esports as well, with those transferable skills that they can get through that lens of esports, but can be applied in a number of other industries so that they're adequately prepared by the time they graduate. An example of that is our international trips that we have. A large component of our program, and really Shenandoah University as a whole, is global competencies and international understanding. So we take trips as many times as we can every year to different countries around the world with students. My goal is one every semester. That's been, again, tough with COVID, but we've hit that. We've hit that ever since. We were in Amsterdam just a few months ago to be able to work an event out in Amsterdam. We went to South Korea as well. And so those are two examples. I've been to a number of other countries with students that just gives them the chance to do either sport management or esports events. I used to teach in sport management, but also just to understand a different culture, understand different perspectives on things and how things are run. It's great for networking. It's great for students understanding and global competencies. So there's a lot of benefits to that, but that hands-on experiential learning that we have with the esports arena that we have, running events on a constant basis, doing the broadcast production inside the classes where it's very project-based learning, if it's writing policies or designing their own events in class. And then the international trips that we do, things that we do that are outside the classroom, everything kind of works hand in hand on that academic and professional development side in order to prepare students as best we can for careers after they graduate. Again, whether it's esports or not, just making sure they're ready to be successful when they graduate.
That sounds like an amazing program. It actually sounds like probably your university is leaps and bounds ahead of what many universities have right now in terms of esports programs. And I especially like the international travel aspect, because personally, when I was in college, I think the best piece of advice that I received is study abroad.
Yeah.
I think everybody should study abroad during college. And, if you do it sort of like a work study, like you're doing, where they get to put on events or help put on events internationally, even better. I mean, what an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I wish I had traveled abroad when I was in college. It was, unfortunately, I never traveled to another country until I got to Shenandoah 10 years ago. And now I've hit every continent except for Antarctica. I'm working on it. I'm working on a way to get to Antarctica. I know they play video games, not much else to do down there because it's really darn cold all the time. So I'm sure there's gaming down there. I'm working on some kind of trip down to Antarctica.
If you need an extra chaperone for that trip, hit me up, because I have not been to Antarctica either, and yeah. I want to put that on. I want to put that on my list. Couple questions about the academic side. I'm wondering, how often do you have students signing up for an esports class, only to find out that it's not just playing Halo for an hour once a week and they get an A?
All the time. That's usually not our our esports students. But our intro to esports is a class available to any student on campus, just like any intro class is. And so when students sign up for it, sometimes they come in thinking, yeah, they're going to come into the arena, they're going to play video games for an hour, and then they're going to do that 3 days a week, and that's about the whole class. No, our class does not ever actually come into the arena during that intro class. They don't actually get in the arena until their event management class, where we talk about how to run an event, how an arena is set up. Obviously, it makes sense to come use the space. But no, playing games is not part of any of the curriculum anywhere that we have throughout any of our coaching. I mean, understanding the game and doing VOD review, yes. Playing the game, not as much. That's not part of it. But yeah, we see students all the time. But even more than students is parents. A lot of parents think that, oh, my son or daughter is going to school and they're just going to play video games. I say, well, if they're going to be on our team, yeah, they're going to play video games. That's what esports is. But if they're in the major, no, they're not playing video games. They're understanding the esports ecosystem and how it all operates, where the cash flow is, where the revenue generation is, where the policy is, setting up events. All those things are what the esports program teaches here. It doesn't teach how to get better at video games. Again, if you're on a team, yeah, our coaches will teach you to do that, but not in the academic side.
That's just always funny to me. I think thinking about like how many people sign up and then are like, wait a minute.
Like, wait, this is not what I thought it would be.
This is not what I signed up for.
Right? Exactly.
So speaking of your classes, I understand that you are the first person to author a textbook for an esports class. Is that right?
One of the first. And I did that a few years ago. There have been a few textbooks now that have been released by some others. So the one that I helped write, I wrote a chapter. I'm not an editor on there. I wrote a chapter, and that was about 3 years ago. And at the time would have been one of the first, if not the first people to help write a textbook for a class. Since then, we've seen a couple of other ones be released. It's just that this one has taken a lot longer because the esports industry changes so much. We keep making updates and edits. So we just gotta get this thing out at some point. But yeah, help write a textbook chapter.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, I mean, that's incredible just thinking about, hey, there's a textbook on esports. I think it's just mind-blowing for maybe folks in our generation. Maybe it's not mind-blowing for folks who are in college right now. They're like, yeah, of course, I'm majoring in that. Of course, there would be a textbook, but that's wild. So, but that's a really cool first to be a part of.
Yeah.
And I hear you on constant updates, because I was actually at one point in charge of writing the curriculum for Game Jam on the League of Legends classes, and it was just editing all the time. You can't keep up.
You have a base and then you just edit it. Oh, you go to the next day. Oh, edit it. Oh, an hour later. Oh, edit it again. Yeah, exactly. It changes so fast.
Exactly. I mean, of course, there are patches which are released somewhat, you get a heads up, or at least, Riot lets you know when the patch is out. But even in between the patches, the meta changes so fast. It's just, right. I don't know how there could be like a printed textbook.
Yeah, it's more about like, again, the ecosystem with how many professional organizations there are, franchise-based models versus private ownership. It's those kind of concepts that they're more evergreen than the meta and the nuances that change so often. But I mean, think about that. The Overwatch League has changed so many times since I wrote that chapter about professional esports. It's like, oh, let's go back and update that. It's not 12 teams, now it's 20 teams. And now Overwatch 2 is going to come out at some point, and that'll be changing again because 5v5 is inherently very different than 6v6. So those changes just are absolutely constant.
Absolutely. So what next for your program at Shenandoah? What are you working on? Is there a new class, or are you, for example, you mentioned diversity. What are your diversity initiatives, and basically what does the future look like for the esports program at Shenandoah? Yeah,
potential for a lot. Probable not as much as I'm hoping for, because that's just what esports is. I'm hoping for everything, right? No, the next things we have coming up, our big push is on recruiting. We want to run more in-person events and find opportunities for high school students and transfer students to go to college, whether it's at Shenandoah or not. So we're hosting a few events, one coming up in May for high schoolers to come compete on campus at Shenandoah in front of 10 to 15 colleges and universities, where students can get recruited, they can sign scholarships, they can sign letters of intent, et cetera. I want to see more of those, because the more of those we can offer to high school students, the better. So running events on a constant basis is a big part of what we're doing. Trying to grow into some new spaces is something we're working on as well, because this space is great. And we have 24 PCs in here right now, but we have 120 students in our program. Those numbers don't add up real well. And I want to host larger events on a more constant basis. So we can seat about 80 spectators in this space. I want to seat about 250 spectators for some of the events that we have coming up. So it's just trying to move into some new spaces, trying to go with the growing that we have. Growing the production side of things is a big thing. I want constant production, constant programming that's not just the play-by-play of our matches we're playing, but is other programming, behind the scenes stuff, a day in the life of stuff, more content that we can put out there to show potential students what esports looks like at the collegiate level. Again, whether it's SU or not, to show the opportunities, show the career opportunities in and through esports. So creating that content is a big push that we have going into next year. And then just reevaluating. I think we've been very reactive over the past 4 years about what esports is. Everybody is, because it moves so fast. We talked about that. So it's been very reactive to what the industry can bear. I want to be proactive. I want to set things up very intentionally with roles and responsibilities for how an esports program can exist on a collegiate level. So it's just kind of reevaluating where we are, where we want to go as a program, as a university, how we operate, but especially on that recruitment side to find opportunities, on the event side, just to run events for the community, for colleges, for high school students, and then growing that content piece to give students things that they can work on that then go on their portfolio, go in their resume. So when they're interviewing for jobs, they can say, not just here's what I did on paper, but here's a whole portfolio of projects I worked on while I was in college. So those are the big initiatives we have coming up.
That sounds amazing. And I like your goal to not just, keep up with the industry, but be a leader in the industry and really set the standard for what an esports program looks like at a university. I really like that. Well, Joey, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. It's also a pleasure, like I said at the beginning, to hear from you year from year, because then we get to witness the growth of your program and the growth of MAEC through the eyes of our participating schools. So please do come back next year, and thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll definitely be here. Can't wait to catch everybody up on what we've been working on next year.